Record. Okay, so we're accessing and utilizing the primary set. We're going to focus on the next two movements. Um, I like to use basically four main movements of the primary set. Releasing the qi, expelling the qi, uh, pouring in the qi into the bai hui, left, right, pushing mountains, and settle the wrist to push the palms. We've also been looking at opening the hips, loosening the hips, squatting, and dropping the center of gravity and rooting down into the earth as a result of relaxing to gravity. So rather than squatting, I guess one of my new taglines is going to be, don't squat, but relax to gravity. So we want to first build that state of relaxation. So we're going to do the work to get to that state. And then we're going to try to do the work to relax to gravity. Um, so let's see how that goes. Last week we started to do a little bit of that, and it's good to see your responses as a result. Let's begin with shaking of the arms. Shake the fingers, shake the wrists, shake the forearms, and start to regulate your breathing. Also a good opportunity to close the mouth and connect the tip of the tongue to the roof of the mouth and see if you can sustain that throughout the whole session. Now add the shoulders and the whole body shaking. A lot of times in the morning when I go into the garden, I try to do all the stuff that I need to do as I um, whether it's pulling tarps or over the beds or releasing the beds of the tarps, or it's leafing or pulling water hoses. I always try to close my mouth and regulate my breathing, keeping the tip of the tongue and the roof of the mouth. Sometimes I can remember, sometimes I forget, but that's the practice. Okay, swing the arms. Okay, and then let's do a little bit of loosening of the hips. So get yourself a little bit of a wide base, bend the knees. We'll tuck in the hips and move the tailbone forward. We'll point the tailbone back, almost like sticking out the butt. Again, tucking in the hips, tailbone forward, tailbone back, almost like forward and back. And then from here, we'll go side to side, just pointing the tailbone to the side. You might feel stretch in the midsection, pointing the tailbone to the other side. So we've got four corners there. We've got left, right. Just go ahead and go through those. Forward and back. Now let's make a circle and sort of round off all those edges to circle the hips. Yeah. Try to keep the knees bent. Try to keep the mind sunk down, rooted down. Exhale as the circle comes around the front. Inhale as the circle comes around the back. Turn to the side. Keep the feet parallel. Just give yourself a little bit of a side turn. We'll just be accessing more of the tissues. Let's turn to the other side. And let's come back to the center and see how much you can expand your range of motion, almost as if you're exaggerating the movement. And so to get more range of motion in the movement, it'll help to bend the knees a little bit more and just feel your max range of motion and then spiral that in as we come into the center. At that point, you'll also start to rise, extending the legs. As you spiral in, circles are getting smaller and smaller until you finally get to the center. And then just really try to hone in on center so the physical movement stops. And then the mental movement sort of drills down into center as you spiral more deeply. And then just kind of let that feeling of center and centeredness, let that descend down into the feet. Let that also kind of rise up through the spine, feeling balanced. Bring your mind back down to your hips and tailbone. And then from here, from this center, we're going to now spiral in the other direction. So from this point, from this single point, you're going to start spiraling first with the mind. Then you start accessing physical tissues, bending the knees, sinking the weight, spiraling out, feeling those circles get larger and larger. And then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go see where our maximum range of motion is for these circles. We'll turn to the side. Pass through center, turning to the other side. We might experience a little bit of a interruption if the internet happens to go out, which is fine. We'll come back to this meeting. So let's face the center now. As we do that, feeling our maximum range of motion now with these hip circles. And then we're going to start to rise up and let those circles spiral in to center. Circles getting smaller and smaller. Keep regulating deep abdominal breathing. And let those circles hone in on center. So we're honing in on mental center. as the physical tissues cease their movement. There's a hummingbird looking for some, it's looking at all the red stuff and the yellow stuff, but there's nothing for it to feed on. Good. So as you spiral in, honing in on that feeling of centeredness and then groundedness, balance. Couple of breath cycles here. And we're going to start the first movement. So let's bend the knees. We're going to relax the spine, relax the arms forward, and then extending legs, pushing into the earth, inhaling, opening spine, lifting hands and arms. We're going to be expelling the chi, opening the chest to expel the chi. And we'll repeat that for a few repetitions. Go ahead and move on your own. Sink the weight. You're going to be inhaling, pushing into earth, extending legs, opening spine. Exhaling. And go ahead and turn to the sides as well for these repetitions, accessing more tissues. And really expand your mind out as well, out into the distance as far as you can. Keep the movement slow, smooth, continuous. Let's come back to center. We'll move on to the next one. Okay, reversing the arms. Now we're bringing in the chi, pouring it into the bai hui. So very important to expand the mind, gathering energy all around and bringing it into bai hui. And typically what we do is we can bring the energy into dantian, store it into dantian, or you can continue to cycle it through the body, pass it down into the feet and into the earth. Or you can do both. Again, we'll get some repetitions, turning to the side. And so for the sake of the progression of the movements, we're honing in on this idea of releasing on the exhale, releasing tension, relaxing, specifically on the exhale. So one of the things that you can do is, as you promote relaxation, of course, the Qigong state is it needs the relaxed state, almost the semi-sleep state. So we're always trying to promote that semi-sleep state. One of the strategies to do that is to utilize strategically the exhale, especially because all the movements are also descending on the exhale. A lot of the movements are descending in the as they're finishing the maximum yang. So as maximum yang is finishing, yin is slowly starting to enter, which is where you start to inhale. So, like for example, max yang here, and then yang finishes transitioning to yin. So it's on this transition where the hands are sinking and you're also releasing a whole bunch of tissues in the shoulders, the arms, you're sinking the weight down into the ground. So you're having all this full body sort of releasing without collapsing to the ground, right? And so this is the concept that also leads us to using only the tissues that are involved. So using only the tissues that are involved. So let's go to the next movement. We've got two more movements. Next one's going to be lifting the hands and then settling the wrists to push the palms. It's interesting to think about that. Settling the wrists to push the palms. So the settling of the wrist sort of facilitates pushing of the palms forward. I'm going to bring the hands back in, inhaling and exhaling down. Again, always trying to promote relaxation, utilizing the strategically the exhale. And in terms of the breath, the exhale is the sort of releasing mechanism, while the inhale, that's sort of the kind of the nourishing, um, contracting, settling the wrist to push the palms forward. Yeah, just very relaxed. Might start to feel the tingling in the hands and the fingers as the tissues relax more and more. It allows for the chi flow out of the extremities, which is really where they want to go. Energy wants to go out the uh, tips of the extremities. So now we're going to push to the side, left, right, to push the mountain. That'll complete the 4 basic movements. We use the same strategy here, settling the wrists to push the palms. Hope you're still breathing there. Inhaling in, arms, hands in. And exhaling down. So we're always trying to push that boundary of slowness, how slow we can move without compromising the breath. And so as we do that, we as we elongate the movement, also elongating the breath cycle, slowing down the breath, slowing down the breathing. And now just take note of your pace here. Take note of the rhythm. You're going to want to sort of register in the nerves, in the nervous system, this sort of feeling of this pace, this relaxed Qigong pace for yourself. Let's go ahead and bring the movement to a close, just sort of closing out this first phase. You can relax your hands at the side or hold them at the dantian. You can bring the feet in. So you're standing tall, standing straight. So we're just going to have a couple of moments of stillness, checking in on the posture, elongating the spine, lifting the head up to the sky, slightly tucking in the chin. Revisiting deep abdominal breathing, mind at the lower dantian. You can close your eyes here to internalize your observation, internalize your feeling. And then just give yourself a few moments where you're just kind of letting the breath go. Just let the breath do what it wants and then just observe from here. Observe the body and posture, observe the breathing. So now we're going to take our mind down to the feet. And we're just going to do a little bit of rocking onto the toes, rocking onto the heels, lifting the toes. Just careful with your balance. You can put your hands out to the side. So let's rock up onto the toes, lifting the heels, rocking up onto the heels, lifting the toes. Okay. So now we're going to, hopefully you've kind of entered that Qigong state, feeling relaxed, body's nice and warm. We're going to go back to a little bit of a wider stance, wider base now. And now we're going to go through the process of relaxing to gravity. So in this process, we're um, bringing in our relaxed state, semi-sleep state, Qigong state, and now opening the joints, opening the hips, opening the knees, and allowing for um, the weight to sink, the body to sink, the mind to sink, and the joints. Okay. And so here, this is going to be um, the time where you're super observant, aware, conscious of your own range of motion, your own range of motion, so that you stay in a place where you don't injure yourself, or you don't do too much, put too much stress on the thighs or even the lower back in this case. So we're going to revisit our um, movements this week. Last week we did the first two movements, and then we did embracing the tiger with this movement. And today we're going to focus in on the settling of the wrist movements forward and also to the sides, as we use those movements to sink the weight and go into a deeper stance. So let's start with the settling of the wrist to push the palms. So what we're going to do is we're going to, as the hands go out, we're going to sink the weight. And remember, at your own leisure and own pace and within your range. So the process is you're going to be inhaling in, lifting the hands up, and then exhaling, settling the wrist, sinking the weight, and pushing. Rising up, hands in, exhaling, hands down. And so you can kind of strategize that incrementally. You might want to, sort of explore your range. If you're not really sure, like I'm quite sure of my range, so I can kind of go down, to where I think the edge of my range is. But if you're not really quite sure, then incrementally with each repetition, you kind of want to just kind of sink down. And this movement follows the principle of, or within martial Qigong, where anytime you um, push the hands out away from the center, you actually sink the weight. And the reason for that in martial Qigong is anytime the arms or hands go away from the body outside center, that exposes it exposes vital areas of the body, but it also gives a opponent opportunity to grab your limb, grab your hand, grab your wrist, and then pull you off your route. So to mitigate that, anytime that the hands go out of the center, the weight sinks so as to sustain the root and sustain the balance. And so this means that also with you don't have to squat with each movement, right? Or you don't have to sink the weight with each repetition. So you can just kind of, um, at your discretion, decide when you want to sink the weight. And so in this way, it's really the hands that are sort of setting the pace, and they're helping to remind your um, breath and remind your mind of the relaxed breathing pace. So I'm going to switch to the next movement, which is left, right, pushing the mountains. And I'm going to do the same thing, relaxing to gravity and pushing out. So similar process to the previous movement, inhaling, lifting the hands, exhaling, pushing out, sinking the weight. Inhaling, bringing the hands back in, rising, exhaling, honing back in at center, repeating the process. And so we're doing actually a very, I'd say, balanced um, practice and a balanced movement. And the reason that it is balanced is because we are stimulating the muscles of the legs. And because we're stimulating the muscles of the legs, the byproduct of that is increased heart rate and then also increased lung rate, right? So if you think about it, like if you're doing squats or like if you're walking briskly or walking up a hill, a bike or something like that, right? You're pumping the largest muscles of the body, the legs, in the legs. And so what this does is it increases the heart rate and increases the lung rate, right? Needing to supply the body with oxygen, right? So in that way, it's sort of a inflammatory and a yang producing movement. But what we're doing is we're balancing that movement and with the hands and then with also with our qigong principles and breathing pace, and in a way we are harmonizing water and fire. So because of the qigong pace, because of the deep abdominal breathing, sustaining slow continuous smooth movement, that's also now producing what would be in this case the yin, um, balancing to the yang of the legs. Hope that makes sense. And you're also giving yourself, giving your body, giving your legs, giving your heart, and giving your lungs. You're also giving them the sort of opportunity to um, I would say open up, be stimulated, and produce more circulation and flow sort of within your own range. And also in the same way that a slow simmering fire sort of over a longer period of time uh, softens a big chunk of meat or something like that. And so what I'm saying is I'm contrasting a sort of searing high fire with a low burning slow cooking. And then over time, so we've been doing this probably about, we've been doing this a good 5 minutes. Over time, you feel yourself getting warmer and warmer. Then you'll start feeling the pores opening. Then eventually some perspiration might happen. And this is also characteristic of the slow burning, low, how do they say it? Slow and low fire or slow and low flame, low and slow. So if you're finding that your heart rate is increasing and maybe that forces you to open your mouth to start breathing out of your mouth, then that's also a good sign that you're sort of exiting your range, because you kind of want to stay within the range where you're keeping the mouth closed and you're able to maintain sustained control of your breathing by keeping the tip of the tongue at the roof of the mouth. So you always want to keep that in mind when you're starting to exhale through the mouth or feeling the body's response exhaling through the mouth. You're sort of, increasing the heart rate, increasing the lung rate, um, a little bit out of your range. And of course, y- there's no dire consequences, there. But we're really trying to be conscious and aware of, our own bodies, not only the messages, but also our range. And so as we close out this phase, if you're needing to slow down the heart rate, slow down the lung rate, we're just here at center, slowly moving the hands. And then we'll come back to posture, central equilibrium, bringing in the feet, closing sort of the session and closing the this phase, and then bring the mind, bringing the chi back to the dantian. And then taking the opportunity here to close the eyes, internalize the observation, sensing, feeling anything in the body. If the heart rate is still um, a little bit of the yang phase and it needs to come down, right here also an opportunity to use the breath, use deep abdominal breathing to bring that heart rate down. Once you feel like you're pretty relaxed, heart rate has come down, then you can sort of let the breath regulation go and then just observe the breath and observe the body, observe the posture. And then we'll come out of this observation mode. So you might be feeling the thighs inflamed. Good opportunity right now to stretch those, grabbing the foot, grabbing the top of the foot, balancing yourself on something close by, wall or chair, and then pulling the heel to the butt, stretching out that thigh there. Letting it go slowly, switching to the other side. Still breath regulation in these movements as well. Inhaling, pulling the foot in, exhaling, opening the muscle, elongating the muscle. And then we'll do twice on each side. Inhaling, pulling the foot in, grabbing it. Exhaling, stretching, elongating. You might be able to use both hands. If you got good balance, you can use both hands and pull the heel into the butt. Switching. Last time on this side. Okay, let's also stretch the lower back, okay? Because that first movement was really it's really tough on the lower back. So let's just go ahead and stretch down, stretch the hands to the wherever's comfortable for you, maybe to the feet if you can, or touching the floor, or grabbing the ankles or grabbing the calves, wherever, so as to stretch out the hamstrings and the lower back. Also relaxing the neck and the head. Slowly coming up, bend the knees, sink the weight, and then roll up, inhaling, exhaling, settling in your posture. And so that completes the session for today and what I wanted to include for today. I'm going to stop the recording and see if there's any questions.